welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Lauren, and today I am going to learn, where did cheese really come from? I love cheese. I'm a big fan of cheese. Cheese is my BFF. I would be very sad if I was fully lactose intolerant. I don't know what I would do if I couldn't eat my cheese. I eat cheese all the time. And so I want to know where it actually comes from. This is a weird history video. I've heard some weird stories in history involving cheese, but I never really, I mean, isn't it just like milk that's gone moldy or something? Like, I know it's nasty, but let's find out, shall we?
You love it.
Yes.
In Western culture, it comes in just about every shape, size, and state of being.
And I will say, there's like a thing on Twitter or whatever, or on the internet somewhere. It's like, you want to catch out a white person, just give them cheese. It's like, it's true, it will work.
And we eat it
Chat
with
me
just
with the
about
cheese
everything.
board.
Some of you may be eating cheese at this moment.
I did consider going to get some cheese to eat for this. I'm glad I didn't, because then I'm not called out.
We see you, Mary. But what do we really know about cheese? And where did it come from? And who made it? Well, get ready, because we're going all the way back. From its simple beginnings to what it has become today. Weird History is going to be talking about the story of cheese.
I'm so excited. Love me cheese.
Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and let us know in the comments below what your favorite cheese is. Now, sit back with a charcuterie board and some wine.
I do like a sharply
We're about
aged
to
cheddar.
Cheese it up.
God milk? Gross.
The moon is made of green cheese. Proverbs of John Haywood.
And Believed by Wallace and Gromit.
The history of cheese is wrapped in as much legend and lore as a packet of Kraft singles is wrapped in plastic. Cheese's origin story is somewhat murky, and it can be difficult to differentiate between myth and fact.
I don't like blue
At one
cheese
point
very
in
much,
history,
though.
some people may have actually believed the moon was made of cheese. Well, in this case, they're right. This lunar surface is actually Wabash Cannonball, an ashed-rind goat cheese that is from Indiana, kind of like
I
the
do
moon,
like goat
but with
cheese.
more corn and Larry Birds. But
Okay.
before we talk about cheese, let's first start with milk. After all, we wouldn't have great fromage without some moo-moo juice. Milk has been intertwined with culture and religion for thousands of years. Let's go back to the heavens, where the Greeks originated the word galaxy from the word gala, meaning milk. Greek
Oh,
mythology
what?
says that
Really?
the Milky Way was formed when Hera, wife of Zeus and goddess of womanhood, spilled her breast milk while feeding her son Heracles. Each one of her little droplets of milk equals
No.
one star in the night sky.
Okay, that's all bullshit then, because Hera wasn't the mother of Heracles. They called him Heracles, and that was like a huge insult to her. So that's like why he had to like go through all of the shit he had to go through. Okay.
Looking out into the vastness of the universe, one cannot help but think, wow, that is a shit ton of milk. How big was that kid? Was that a single squirt?
Because like Heracles means Hera's glory, right? And it was okay. So I already don't know how much of this is going to be accurate because the Greek mythology is already wrong.
Oh shoot, I wasn't paying attention and left the faucet running situation. The universe's mysteries. Hindus also have a milk universe origin story, in that the creation of the stars and galaxy was done by Vishnu, who did so by churning a massive sea of milk. Needs more salt. Even throughout Christianity, the Virgin Mary is often depicted showing her breast, lactating. Turning to science, milk is what makes a mammal a mammal. The term mammal in Latin means of the breast, and is part of mammalia, which is the ability to produce milk.
So
when
that's
did
why
we start
platypuses are
drinking milk
mammals.
other
Okay.
than our own?
Who discovered we could get milk from cows? And what did
Probably
he think
somebody
he was
who
doing at the
watched a
time?
cow nursing.
Billy Connolly.
The rise of farming and agriculture, as well as the domestication of animals such as sheep and goats, led man into his first foray into drinking milk. Evidence points to the time near 9000 BC that the first people to milk animals were the Sumerians, one of the earliest known civilizations, who lived in southern Mesopotamia, which today would be the region of Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. Sheep and goats were first used for milk for a number of reasons. Along with their generally nicer disposition, those animals were used to living in smaller spaces, such as caves, making it easier to corral them in a confined space. Cows would eventually get...
I do like the props that they're doing. I'm just like concerned about that Hera thing. Okay, I looked it up. And it's saying that it was sneaky. She did not realize that she was nursing him. And when she realized it, she like ripped him from her breast. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, that part, like, that got me, that Hera thing. So now I'm just like really tense about the whole thing because it wasn't her kid. That was the whole point.
Cows would eventually get gated around 7000 BC in the region of what is now Turkey. Domesticated animals were first used as wet nurses, where babies would drink milk from the animal itself.
Oh.
The act of tapping an animal's nip has taken place throughout history, both real and fabled. The founders of Rome, Romulus and Remus, are depicted feeding off a mother wolf.
Those are
that
some
raised
jacked
twin brothers.
babies.
But how are babies able to drink milk, let alone other animals? After all, aren't we all lactose intolerant? We know someone who is. Look at him, watching this video, shivering. There was a point when adults started drinking milk, and around 5500 BC, adults developed lactose persistence, or kept the lactase enzyme in their gut, which allowed them to drink and digest milk. Babies can drink milk without all the stomach mumbo-jumbo because of rennet. Rennet is an enzyme found in the stomach of mammals that curdles the casein in milk and converts lactose into lactic acid. Generally, that enzyme goes away after weaning off your mother. We'll see in a moment why rennet is important to cheese.
All right. And I know that some people like lose that ability to really drink milk or lactose stuff, but not everybody. I hope I never do. I mean, like, I don't. Okay, I have a little bit. I can eat like hard cheeses, but I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, I might not be supposed to be eating as much of this as I do.
And what's cheese? Quarts of milk. James Joyce, Ulysses.
Somebody's talking about me.
In Greek mythology, the son of Apollo, Aristeus, who was the god of shepherds and beekeeping, was also the god who invented cheese. If you're giving a god credit for bringing it into the world, surely cheese was pretty important to the Greeks. But in reality, cheese was probably around a few thousand years before the Greek gods were created. The ongoing myth of the origins of cheese is that years ago, some random dude, presumably in the Middle East, transported milk in a pouch made from an animal's stomach, and inadvertently discovered when going for a drink of some milk, he got clumps of curd. Let's quickly see how cheese is actually made. Basically, making cheese is taking warmed milk, adding a starter culture, and rennet. The lactic acid coagulates the milk, and the rennet separates the curd from the whey. Traditional rennet is from the stomach of a calf. Early cheese was probably a simplified version of this process. There's evidence of cheese making occurring around 8000 BC in Mesopotamia by Neolithic farmers. Concurrently, the Neolithic era was coming into its own, which brought with it the development of pottery and ceramics, which helped bring cheese into reality. Ceramics and pottery helped with not only food storage and transport, but early versions of strainers or sieves emerged. With a warm Middle Eastern climate, as well as naturally occurring regional bacteria, milk would quickly spoil, ferment, and coagulate. These curds would be the earliest foundation and a version of the cheese that we all know and love today. After seeing this happen, it was only a matter of time before people started trying these clumps of curd.
Of course.
And realizing
You gotta.
it was more digestible than milk. With this ability to preserve, dairy was able to spread around the region more rapidly. This gave people from the region an advantage when it came to...
So are we going to talk about why it's more digestible than milk? Or not? Or did I miss that? Is it the rennet?
their survival. A few thousand years later is when we see evidence of more and more cheese popping up around the Middle East and Europe.
The emergence of cheese.
Cheese is milk's leap towards immortality. Clifton Fadiman.
Around 5,000
all these
years
dudes
ago,
waxing
ancient
poetic about
Egypt
cheese.
was believed to have been making cheese. Using reeds, Egyptians made an early version of cottage cheese made from goat's milk. Egyptian pharaohs were buried with cheese in the urns, giving them a tasty
Stank.
treat for the afterlife. I hope they brought enough for everyone.
That, I'm
In
sure it was
2010,
stinky.
at a burial site near Cairo at the Saqqara necropolis, archaeologists discovered a solidified whitish mass in jars that belonged to a high-ranking Egyptian official. This whitish mass ended up being the oldest cheeses ever discovered.
I feel like I
We all
remember
love
that.
well-aged cheese, but avoiding this particular hunk is strongly recommended.
Eh.
Coming back to
Yeah.
Greece, or Greece 2, the Greeks created an early version of the salty brined feta cheese, as well as a harder sheep's milk cheese, similar to modern-day pecorino. The Iliad, which was written in 762 BC, mentions cheese and coagulating of curds, linking it to healing.
Cool.
The Odyssey does as well, where Homer tells of how Cyclops made cheese, putting curd into a basket so that it could drain. Greeks would use an offering
Aw,
of
I
cheese
love
to
the
the gods,
Cyclops.
and
So
even a
sorry,
young Spartan's
Polyphemus.
rite of passage was to steal cheese. But when you think of Greece, you obviously think of feta.
Feta
It's such a
cheese.
popular cheese that it's about 70% of the cheese consumed by Greeks. Today,
I do like
feta
feta.
is protected under EU legislation. The cheese known as feta can only be produced in certain regions of Greece.
Wow.
We'll get to more product designations later.
Okay.
Let's go to Rome. And when in ancient Rome, do what both rich and poor Romans do. Eat cheese. The
Okay.
ancient Romans commonly enjoyed it as an appetizer before meals, and even capped it off as a dessert. You would think milk would get the same treatment, but milk tended to be consumed by farmers and in Northern Europe. Romans would consider them low class and called them
Of course they would.
barbarians. And if you know the ancient Romans,
Well,
anyone who wasn't Roman
yeah.
was a barbarian.
Hey, that guy looks like David Tennant. This guy, the guy who's like coming in for an angry kiss on Mr. Collapsy in the red robes, he looks like David Tennant.
When in Rome, be catty.
Okay, so this is this the Caesar one? Because there's at least one of these, like, we're gonna kill you all, we're gonna kill you, that is depicting of Caesar, but then there's another one that's really famous that actually doesn't depict Caesar's assassination. I think this is the Caesar's one, though.
Rome produced a variety of soft and hard cheeses, as well as imported cheese from their conquered lands. As the Roman Empire expanded across Europe and the Mediterranean, the logistical problem of feeding the nearly 500,000 Roman soldiers was challenging. But hard cheeses became the go-to meal, ready to eat, of Roman soldiers. Many soldiers also doubled as cheesemakers themselves.
Oh,
A soldier's daily ration would be 1 ounce of pecorino, a hard cheese, or as the Romans would call it, a dry cheese. Pecora translates from Italian as sheep.
Pecora.
But it would be a few centuries later that we would see the emergence of one of Italy's most iconic cow cheeses. This would be around the corner. Because as
Parmesan.
the Roman Empire collapsed and power shifted, manors were gifted from the aristocracy to the church, where around the 7th century we would see the rise of monastic cheeses.
Oh. Monks! The church making cheeses. The monks made beer, they made cheese. The monks were
Hast
doing what's
thou
what.
not poured me out as milk and curdled me like cheese? Joe,
Kinky.
speaking of God.
It
Oh, okay, so it is meant. Okay, I was like, that sounds awful. And it's like, but yes, okay. It was meant to. Job said it.
may be shocking to hear, but the church, of all places, has been one of food's biggest influencers.
Yeah?
Monks have played a pivotal role in
They've made
developing
wines,
life's nourishments such
cheeses,
as beer and
beers.
wine. They've also had a huge hand in creating and preserving the
Nom, nom,
recipes
nom.
and traditions of cheese. Making cheese was a pretty natural fit since most monasteries were also raising sheep, cows, and goats.
Okay, that tracks.
Monks also lived a solitary life, so making cheese, something that was very labor-intensive and time-consuming, would totally complement their lifestyle. We can thank Saint Benedict,
Thanks,
the
Saint
patron
Benedict.
saint of Europe and a true saint for cheese. Benedict lived during the late 400s and early 500 AD, and was a religious reformer who was instrumental in the construction of monasteries. These
Cool.
monks, who were devoted to self-sufficiency and manual labor, helped bring a new smelly wrinkle of cheese into the world: the washed rind cheese. In your normal everyday cheese board, washed rind cheeses are synonymous with being, well, smelly, stinky, nasty. A washed rind just means that the fromage, usually a soft cow's milk cheese,
Like brie?
has been washed in a brine. The wash makes the surface attract a variety of bacteria, and it is that bacteria that aids in giving most washes a reddish color and a nose-puckering smell. As you can see on
That
this piece
does-
of washed rind Langres, those white tufts are the mold Fusarium domesticum.
I mean, honestly, those look like flesh. Like the pink ones were looking really fleshy and horrible. Like you would use that if you wanted to like make some kind of zombie movie look particularly awful. Like that was nasty looking.
But safe and delicious to eat.
Gotta
Most
love the
brines
safe
are saltwater,
bacteria.
But beer, wine, brandy,
Yeah, I do love a beer cheese though.
spices can also be used. Using beer or wine for a wash is quite a
The monk taking a little, just a taste, just a taster. Go, 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 go. I love it. I need to find a bowl to take a little. There. Me and him, we the same.
bit of sense since many monastic monks were already making both.
They look like they're having
Cheese,
fun.
beer, and wine? Yes, please. Monks. The OG BYOB. Most
Love 'em.
monasteries were in Switzerland, Belgium, and France. With monks experimenting with varieties of milk and processings, they helped create classic stinker legends such as Limburger, Epos, and Munster.
I've heard
In
of
fact,
Limburger and Munster.
which gets its name
I
from
like
the
Munster
Latin word
cheese.
monastratium, which
Oh.
translates to monastery, was created around 1371 by Benedictine monks. And
like
not
Munster
this
cheese.
guy. I know. I was disappointed.
Sorry, Herman.
One of the most famous stinky cheeses, sometimes called the king of cheeses, is France's Epoisse.
I've never heard of
created
it.
at the end of the 16th
But see,
century.
like, does that not look like a hunk of flesh? That's disgusting. That is one cheese I would not eat.
By the Cistercian monastery of Epoisse. The recipe stayed with the church for over 200 years before being given
If
to
the
farmers in
inside
Burgundy.
looks better,
Even
then
everyone's
maybe.
favorite complex, Napoleon, was a fan of this pungent delight.
Is that everyone's favorite complex, or is that Oedipus? I feel like Oedipus is a favorite complex.
Today, en Paris, because Epoisse is so funky, it is illegal to carry it on public transport.
Good.
Say, stinky. Monasteries didn't just stick to washed rind.
That
But
part looks
played
good.
a role in developing and perfecting well-known cheeses
love a
such
cheese
as Roquefort,
ball.
Parmesan, and Tête de Moine, which
I've heard of the-
translates
again.
into monk's head.
Oh.
Another saint to be thankful for would be Saint Gall, who in the region of Appenzell helped bring forward Alpine cheeses. As mountain cheeses spread across Switzerland near the French border, Gruyere emerged.
Ooh,
Gruyere
Gruyere.
was so
I like
popular, in
Gruyere.
fact, that the canton of Bern seized control of the Gruyere region. He then moved cheesemakers across the region to settle and grow the cheese business. Alpine cheeses are an example of transhumance, where cattle, according to the season, are moved around to feed,
Oh.
typically in the highlands during the summer and the
Cool.
lowlands in the winter, where they feed on
I
grass.
will say, I
straw,
adore all of the little models that they've done, like all the cute little animals on the cheeses. That is so fun.
and fodder to make the seasonal and oh so delicious
Mm.
Mont d'Or. Around the year 774 AD, the famous Brie, or Brie de Meaux, was created by monks in the town of Brie. The cheese became much more popular when Charlemagne stopped by the monastery and tried a hunk. He
Thanks,
was
Charlemagne.
so blown away by the creamy Brie that he asked for it to be delivered to his castle on a regular basis.
Cool.
Charlemagne basically invented DoorDash. In the 14th century,
I do like
in
Brie.
Italy's upper Po River Valley, is where Parmesan, at least the
Parmesan.
version we know today, was developed. Thanks
Nice.
to the intuitiveness of monks in the area, they developed an irrigation system and turned the Po Valley lowlands into a fertile agricultural area for cows to graze.
Good job,
and
boys.
cow's milk cheese quickly gained popularity. Advancements in cattle breeding and land maintenance helped the Dutch become the original
Kaaskoppen.
or cheeseheads in the Dutch language. That term
Kaaskoppen.
was not meant to be endearing. The Dutch people
Oh.
were thought to be a joke. People who just sat around and ate
Wisconsin
cheese all
got
day,
it, though.
Which sounds like some pretty rad people in my book.
Yeah, right?
But the Dutch weren't just laying around watching windmills spin. They had been making cheese since they were occupied by the Romans around 54 BC, and were actually way ahead of the game. While the Romans taught the Dutch how to make hard cheese, the Dutch took it to a new level. The quest to feed their population required them to offer up something to trade, with their understanding of creating the idea.
That picture looks like a Where's Waldo. Look at that. That looks like what you would see in a Where's Waldo. Okay. This is fun. You're going to see something new every single... I don't want to spend too much time on this because this is awesome. There's a fish eating a fish. This lady is doing something with the snake. Okay. I'm going to spend way too much time looking at this if I don't stop. So this is awesome. I love this picture. Tag yourself. Who are you?
Quest to feed their population required them to offer up something to trade. With their understanding of creating the ideal pasture land, their cattle became better fed, which led to an increase in milk production. Henceforth, the Netherlands became a global trading force in milk. And it would be somewhere around 1184 when the first records of the famous Gouda showed up, or pronounced Gouda, if we're trying to be
Gouda.
Dutch about it.
Oh.
Being a dry cheese made
I like
Gouda's
Gouda.
ability to transport to the furthest reaches of the world. Speaking of shelf life, let's jump ahead to the 16th century, when England developed cheddar cheese. Originally
Cheddar.
named after the town, cheddar is also a verb, cheddaring, which is a unique process in cheesemaking.
It's also a noun if you're talking about money. I guess it's a noun if you're talking about cheese, but like,
involving slicing strained curd, stacking it, and restacking to draw more whey out. It's a process that makes cheddar a pretty smoothly textured cheese,
I like
as
cheddar
well as
cheese.
increases its ability to have a stronger shelf life. England exported the cheddar
I like
making
the
process to the
12-year
colonies,
aged
including
cheddar
Ireland,
and-
Canada, Australia, as well as America. U.S. cheesemakers, for the most part, stuck with making exclusively cheddars until about the end of the Civil War. Cheddar is also unique in that it was one of the first cheeses to be mass-produced via industrialization. And it would be
and now we have like so much cheese underground. the government cheese, the American like bunkers of cheese.
time that would change the course of cheese and cheesemaking forever.
Industry.
You can't make everyone happy. You're not cheese. Anonymous.
When you think of industrialization, you might think of England and smokestacks. But this also applied to cheeses and the farm. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the rise of industrialization, along with some key inventions and innovations, would lead to an era of mass production, where it would help expand access to fromage, but artisanal producers would suffer. In America in the 1840s, as railroads developed across the U.S., so did the distance a cheese could cover. To keep up with demand, cooperatives developed and started pooling their milk for the production of cheese. In 1851 in Rome, New York, is where Jesse Williams would build the first cheese factory in the United States. His factory would be a boon to creating large amounts of processed cheese. The independently owned cheesemakers could keep up the volume and efficiency of booming American cheese factories, which were popping up all over the U.S. Wisconsin alone would become home to over 1,500
Wisconsin.
cheese factories, earning the Cheesehead moniker.
Yep.
But as we know now, the Dutch, not Wisconsinites, were the OG cheeseheads. And in 1864, Louis Pasteur developed pasteurization, which is heating milk to kill the bacteria and germs found in raw milk. It would take a little over 70 years, but in 1935, the first industrial cheese using pasteurized milk would be made.
Ooh.
Artisanal cheesemakers would argue that pasteurizing milk also kills the good bacteria from the cheese.
But it's
In
just a different kind of
1918,
cheese.
America would see the rise
It's a
of one of
different
the
kind of
world's
cheese.
most curious cheeses, Velveeta.
Velveeta!
Emile Frey of the Monroe Cheese Company, Velveeta was a happy accident and was
Oh.
originally intended to melt and reuse leftover cheese, mixing it into a velvety texture. Kraft would buy the company 10 years later and tweak the formula.
Kraft's nutritious Velveeta is full of health from milk.
In 1954,
makes
given
for a good mac and
refrigeration and the
cheese.
rise of the grocery store, the birth of the milk tank was almost the nail in the
Ugh.
coffin for artisanal cheese. Industrialization also had another consequence. It took
Okay, that was an. What kind of
off
game is
for
that?
Artisanal cheese.
I'm gonna use you like a seesaw while you hold it in your mouth, son.
Industrialization also had another consequence. It took work away from women. In the traditional cheesemaking world, women were the drivers in production, being
Oh.
both milkers and cheesemakers.
Wow.
And were also the keepers of recipes. Factories were dominated by men, and the perception of women not being capable of working there pushed them out of the industry.
That's
As
unfortunate.
factory production increased, so did the number of ingredients, going from the traditional
tracks.
cheese ingredients, milk, salt, rennet, enzymes, to a sample of some modern cheese. Skim milk, whey, milk protein concentrate, sodium citrate, corn syrup solids, salt, buttermilk, part skim milk, cheese culture, sodium phosphate, milk, lactic acid, sorbic acid, natural and artificial flavor, carrageenans, apocarotinol, beta-carotene, titanium dioxide, autolyzed yeast extract,
Jesus
citric
Christ.
acid, vitamin A palmitate, milk fat, and riboflavin.
Wow.
As recently as 2016, the delicious Kraft Parmesan cheese contains
cheese.
cellulose, which is a filler made from wood chips.
Oh,
to
good.
prevent the grated cheese from clumping. Fiber. After industrialization, war was another major factor in the demise of artisanal cheeses. In England, between fluctuating prices, rationing, and cheesemakers being called to duty, farm-made cheese was almost completely wiped out after World Wars I and II. Industrial cheeses were cheaper, easier, and more convenient.
I do
It
like
also led to the
artisanal
rise of
cheeses, though.
industrial feedlots, which have an impact on the environment and animals, as animals are confined indoors and not able to be outside in the pasture
Sorry,
eating
cows.
their natural grass diet. With industrialization, not only did quality and taste lose out, sometimes the animals themselves did. For example, take the cheese La Oveja Negra. This queso comes from a black-haired version of the Manchega sheep breed, which are usually white. The black sheep really live up to the black sheep label, and was on the verge of extinction, largely due to the animal producing less milk than its white counterpart. Now it all looks pretty bleak for the small batch, mom and pop, cheese home team. But who was going to save real cheese?
Farmers markets. Farmers markets are gonna do it. You need the hipsters, baby, to come in and be like, but I want the real stuff. You need some bougie ass bitches to come up here and save the real cheese. We do have a farmers market here in the summertime, and I do like to go to it whenever I can, and I do buy a lot of cheese from there. I like the proper cheeses, the older ones, the ones that I know are made on like actual farms and stuff.
You have to be a romantic to invest yourself, your money, and your time in cheese. Anthony Bourdain.
Anthony!
In the United States,
you.
one group you can thank for the return of artisanal cheeses were the hippies. Yeah, that's right. Those dirty, peace-loving counterculture flower children during the 1960s helped lead the resurgence of farmhouse cheesemaking. Aided by the rise in gastronomy in the 70s, American artisanal cheeses continued to grow throughout the 80s and 90s.
Cool.
And it was in the early 2000s where, much like artisanal beer, whiskey, and wine, artisanal cheese producers proliferated. In 2012, over 800 small batch cheesemakers produced more than 300 different artisan cheeses, more than doubling the previous 6 years. Today, the USDA reported that processed cheese consumption has declined by 4%. The rise of artisan cheeses benefited the previously mentioned black Manchega sheep, who may produce less milk, but milk they do produce is creamier and tastier, and has since seen a resurgence.
Nom, nom, nom.
Outside of Spain,
I need to go back to the Mars Cheese Castle. JD, come take me to the Mars Cheese Castle. I need to go.
folks stayed busy in other parts of Europe by developing a system to protect both the cheese and the region where the fromage originated by providing a standard for intellectual property, especially given many
That's
of
a
the
crazy
cheese's
knife.
overall
I can
long
never
history.
make my cheese slice
The
that
AOC,
easy.
or Appellation d'origine contrôlée, was first developed for wines in 1919, and cheese soon gained protection under AOC
Good.
with Blue Sheep's milk cheese, Roquefort, first earning that distinction in 1925. Very appropriate given its history, which in 1393, Charles VI essentially implemented an early version of AOC when he granted a monopoly for the village of Roquefort-sur-Sauzon in the Aveyron region in southern France. Every king thereafter renewed this grant, which helped
cool.
conceptualize the AOC designation. AOC is a sort of quality assurance that covers all aspects of the process, from both the geography, terroir, the climate, recipe, even the specific input from a person. Terroir was mentioned on that list, and it's a word you hear a lot in the food world. It's how each region's environment helps shape the character and the quality of the cheese produced. The AOC designation protected cheesemakers from getting ripped off, even our stinky
Cool.
friend, Époisse. This
So,
cheese
stop
has pretty
showing
much
that to me.
disappeared from French farms
Oh my
in the
God.
mid-1950s.
It's so gross
Farmers
looking.
helped resurrect this stinker with the regional knowledge from the locals for the recipe. The cheese gained popularity and
I just
earned
don't wanna
AOC
see it.
status in 1991. Charles de Gaulle once said,
Vous gouvernez un pays qui a une variété de 248 fromages.
De Gaulle may have actually underestimated that count. Today in France alone, there are between 1,000 and 1,600 different types of cheese, with around 40 varieties that have received AOC designations. While France has the AOC designation, many other countries, including Italy and Switzerland, use other acronyms, such as DOC, or Denominazione di Origine Controllata, to indicate when a cheese has this designation. In America, because of separate trade laws, we can make it sell Parmesan, call it Parmesan, but it's not a true Parmesan.
Snow cheese.
To get a real, authentic Parmigiano, look for Parmigiano Reggiano. This regional version is compliant with cattle diet, length to age of the cheese, and geographic production area, meaning that to keep its authenticity, cheese has to come from Parma and Reggio Emilia provinces of Italy.
Makes sense.
While Europe has protected many regional cheeses, some well-known names like cheddar and Gouda are used more generically, and in this way say less about where the cheese is from, and more a way to describe the product of style itself.
What about American
While many
cheese?
aspects of cheese have changed over thousands of years, many have stayed the same. Throughout its history, we've seen cheese go through a cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. And seeing how cheese is made, it seems appropriate. Given the impact on our environment, our changing
Mozzarella.
landscape, where will cheese be in the next 50 years? But as long as good and real cheese is here, might as well enjoy a piece, a slice, or a hunk. And remember to support
Damn
your
straight.
local regional cheesemakers.
Damn straight.
So what do you think? What other foods would you like a full history on? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of these other food videos from our weird history.
Okay. Still mad about the Greek mythology thing at the beginning, because that throws everything else into like a weird. I'm like, okay, but like how much is. All right, it's fine. I'm sure that this was mostly accurate. Yeah, I love cheese. Still love cheese. Still need to go back to a farmer's market at some point in the near future and eat some. I've just been so busy and it's been hot. We're under a heat warning right now. We're having fun. But anyway, thanks for watching this video. If you got as mad about the Greek thing as I did, tell me. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.